2 minutes after 8. Welcome to Point of View. It's our Monday edition of Point of View. As you know, we do elections on Monday and we look at all manifestos. And today it's the ANC's turn. We have none other than President Kgalema Motlanthe in studio with us. A very good evening and thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, good evening, Pamela, and good evening to Kaya listeners.
Many are saying that this is going to be a watershed election. Do you agree? And what will make it a watershed election?
Well, for starters, we have, according to the IEC, 42 political parties registered to contest these elections, plus independents. As you know, the Constitutional Court handed down a judgment which allows for independents to contest here.
And is that the only reason why it may be the watershed election that everybody is purporting it to be?
Well, if so many South Africans are saying, why not me? I'm ready to, raise my hand and or throw my hat into the ring. That in itself means that there's two things. The first one is that the coalescing of our polity is taking shape, because before it settles down, it has to bring everybody on board. All the brave souls have to step to the plate and say, we are ready to contest elections. I mean, one of them actually says he thinks the term of 5 years is too long. He only needs 3 years to fix this country.
You've been in government. Is that realistic?
No, I'm just saying, I mean, just this, rush and proliferation of political parties and groupings and individuals who are willing to avail themselves to serve their country is in itself an important point, which I think qualifies these elections to be described as watershed elections. Yeah.
We've been speaking to many political parties. Manifestos are, by their very nature, they're glossy. They promise everything. You would know that it's not necessarily possible to deliver on all the things that you want to actually deliver on. And as someone who understands that balance, and I've seen the ANC's manifesto and the priorities. You have priorities that are on the table. The things that strike me, and the language that strikes me, for instance, access to good and quality healthcare and education. And I want to separate the words access and quality. Do we have a quality problem with regards to education and healthcare? And we'll talk about access just now.
Yeah. Let's start with education, basic education.
Yes.
Yes, we do have access is being addressed because the reports of the Statistician General over the years attest to that, because, of all children who are, to enroll for the first time in our schools, 96% of that age group do register and enroll. And so the Statistician General says in the white communities, the white schools and the Indian schools, those children who would have accessed education that way, if you track their progress after 12 years, you find that they actually end up at tertiary. And he says when it comes to the African and colored children, the same cohort tracked over a 12-year period, only 22% go through grade 12, which means there's lots of leakage taking place there. And therefore, what is needed is an improvement on the quality of education. So, and that improvement does not only entail getting good passes. It also means that right from early childhood development centers, the teachers ought to have tertiary education qualification, because part of their role is to identify the strengths in these children at that very early stage, so that they are channeled into the correct stream. Generally speaking, there's the academic stream, and there's the artisanal stream. So if right from the basic education level, the two streams are in place, and children are channeled correctly, then of course we'll raise the education levels of this country, because you see it affects the majority of the population. So township schools, public schools are not doing that great, and that's where this leakage takes place. So to improve that, we got to invest in teacher training, so that we aim to produce teachers for the public schools and schools in the villages and the township, who would be Texas and very good in natural and maths subjects, so that these children can get a solid foundation, because that's where I think quality becomes a problem. Access, as I said, access has been addressed here. It's the quality.
So some of the teachers that we have currently are teachers that come now from university. As you know, the system changed, you would remember that time.
Yes.
And so then it probably means to me that we also then have to address the issue of the quality of higher education itself.
Yes.
If we are then concerned about the teachers that are coming out to teach these children.
Yeah. Well, if you do a comparison of teaching and nursing.
Yes.
Nursing is also now done through universities.
Yes.
So you have people coming out with degrees, nursing degrees. Is that better than bedside training for nurses or not? You see, so that's where the question of quality arises. That's why I was saying we need to invest in ECD teachers.
Yes.
And because part of and that's what countries like Finland do. That's what countries like Germany and Sweden do. Because then you address the problem that we have now. The assumption which informs our basic education is that all children are academics, must pursue the academic stream. It's only once they have either dropped out at grade 10, 11 or 12 that we then mention TVET colleges. And you need plumbers, you need all kinds of hard skills that TVET colleges would be providing. The universities of technology, that's the stream that should be fed by children who basic subjects, prepared them for that.
So when we look at the early development phases, we now know that they're moving from social development to basic education, great, to address exactly what you're talking about. And then grade 0 will now be compulsory, which is fantastic. And I'm trying to see where you feel the real gap is, because we do have TVET colleges.
Yes.
We now have a situation where someone who wants to go the artisanal route can leave the system at grade 10, 12, 11. So in your view, where then is the problem? Because we seem to be addressing these issues on paper. Clearly, we're not doing great. Where do you feel is the real problem?
Well, let me give you the example of Zimbabwean education. So in Zimbabwe, the problem was lack of access to education. In other words, for a black child to go into any Education Institute, it meant either parents sell their livestock, or there's a bursary from missionaries or the churches and so on. Now, after 1980, their independence, the Zimbabwean authorities took the first term to send many young people into teacher training before opening up access. So by the time they now made access easier, the teachers were in place. Yes, they didn't have to, because they didn't have the same problem that we had here of different systems of education, Bantu education, and so on. They had one system, and they never had to tinker or change it at all. All they did was to open up access, but they took the first term to prepare to fast-track training of teachers to the same levels. And of course, they retained 13 years for basic education.
Sure.
Yeah, we dropped the 1 year, now we have 12, isn't it?
Is it getting better?
Well, it's hard to, compare. The old system, was real drudgery,
No, I wouldn't talk about the old system.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go there.
Yeah, so now children have access to smart devices. Children have access to general education. The challenge is how do we then inculcate in them a culture of reading rather than the quick methods of AI and so on. Yeah.
We spoke about access a little bit,
Yeah.
and you are saying access is good.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, you also know that government is complicated. You have currently Equal Education taking the Western Cape province to court because there are a number of children who still don't have access to school, even though they've applied. And that's why I say government is complicated, because yes, at a national level, you have all these other things that are in place and policies in place. And I don't think it's just the Western Cape. I think it happens in other provinces as well, where then the province has its own systems in place, and access then becomes a challenge. It also goes down to municipalities and so on. So in your view, how do we make sure that national policies trickle all the way down to the provinces, even as they are led by governments that are not necessarily in national government?
Yes, well, education is one of those, competencies that are also, passed on to provinces.
Yes.
Yes. So that in itself creates this creative approaches, if you like, and even though we have one system, but the reality is that the gurus of this world are lucrative businesses, precisely because the quality of public education is not one which enthuses parents to want to send their children into those public schools. There are some that do well in the villages and in Soweto as well, and other townships. But there are exceptions to the rule, and that's why I was mentioning this Zimbabwean approach of preparing teachers, because if you invest in teachers, then you have the capacity to absorb as many children as possible, and give them quality education. Remember, the first Minister of Education in democratic South Africa, Dr. Sibusiso Bengu, his role was to merge all the systems and create a single national system of education. And then So that's what, occupied him and Professor Manganye, who was the Director General for the first term. Once that was accomplished, the next Minister of Education, Professor Kara Asmal, introduced outcome-based system of education. It worked very well in Ireland and so on, without taking into account that for the majority of black kids in the townships, they have parents who are working. They have parents who have no tertiary education. So this system entailed, assignments and projects. So the parents
hands-on kind of
the
exercises.
parents had to, play an important role in the inputs. And of course, in white communities, where the average family has more than one, graduate, and the teachers in those schools are also graduates. So the system imposed on them an additional responsibility of what I call administration. That you have to ensure the projects are submitted and you mark them and all of that. Now, in the majority of township schools where the teachers were trained to do the barest minimum required, they couldn't do both. If they did the administration efficiently, they wouldn't be able to prepare to teach. If they taught, then they failed on the other side. That's why the next Minister of Education, Angie Motshekga, had to do an assessment by interviewing teachers in a cross-section of schools. And she came to a determination that this system is making a bad situation worse. And that's why she had to abandon it. Yeah.
Many polls are telling us, and not all are credible, may I just add, many polls are pointing to the fact that when we go to these elections, no one's going to come out with the outright majority. That's what I think everybody kind of is working off. We've seen how local government with coalition parties has really become unstable. Does it concern you when it comes to national and provincial government?
Well, firstly, polls are not predictions. They measure public sentiment at a particular time. And depending on the kind of questions put to them, they then give responses. So polls in themselves are not predictions. That's the first point, the qualification that we must attach to this. Now, the experience of coalitions at local government level is that they are not put together on common programs or action plans, so that all parties that are included in the coalition government commit to the action plan, that this is what we're going to do for this term. And they are also not based on principle. They are transactional.
Yes.
So what is in it for us?
Yeah.
So we come in with 2 seats and we say we need the following portfolios. And therefore it creates an unstable system because such transactions, I mean, if there are better offers, then people cross the floor and so on.
And we've seen that. We've seen that in many municipalities, which then leads me to my next question, because if then relationships should be looked at in terms of some certain principles, it then would mean the ANC is thinking very carefully about the parties that they want to engage with, because we assume that you don't want to get into a transactional kind of coalition arrangement.
True.
So who are those partners that will align neatly with the policies of the ANC so that there is certainty of sorts, policy certainty of sorts?
Well, we can't predict the outcomes of the elections.
Of course.
And therefore, I'm sure each party works out a framework of, how they're going to engage with other parties once the results are out. So the ANC is also, thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
And of course, because it's elections, no team goes into any contest, with
looking to lose.
Looking to lose, yeah.
Yes.
So some people will say it's bravado and so on, but all parties say they want 2/3 majority.
Of course.
You see, and so old man Wilton Mkwai Bribri used to say, if we say we want 2/3 majority, he would say, and what about this last third? We want 3/3 majority.
Yeah. In the manifesto, you really are concerned about livelihoods of people. People first is really where you center the manifesto. You speak of not just jobs, but food insecurity, which is a big problem. We've heard today that Shell is pulling out of the country. With all the efforts that government has tried to put together in the past 5 years, we're not turning the corner with this economy. Some are de-investing, as we've seen with Shell today. Why do you think that is?
Well, firstly, the principle of what you do if you are a country that is richly endowed with natural resources. So you have these minerals.
Yes.
But you don't have the capital to actualize them or realize them. And then there are those with capital who are looking for opportunities to invest. The cardinal question is, you have what these people with capital want. You don't have the capital.
Yes.
How do you create an environment in which the people with capital are incentivized without you losing the benefits of your natural resources? Now, because if you think of it, these natural resources have been there for a zillion years. So, and until they are mined and then beneficiated so that you create jobs, our problem is that from the early years, as we look at performances,
yes,
we say no, we were doing very well. The economy was growing at 5% and so on. But it was primarily because of commodity prices, not manufacturing. So the manufacturing has been going south, and because we are still primarily based on the commodities. Of course, agriculture has been improving as well. So in a sense, we are not accumulating enough reserves from these natural resources that we have, because unless you have capital, your heart may say this community deserves a clinic or a hospital, and an improved bulk infrastructure and maybe public transport, efficient public transport. But if you don't have the capital to actualize that, it won't happen. It remains a pipe dream. So how we relate to investors must be informed by that understanding. It must be informed by that understanding.
Surely the resource is just as valuable as those with capital.
Yeah.
In other words, have we really truly realized our bargaining power? Have we really?
No, that's the point I'm trying to communicate.
Yes. That
we have these minerals, but we don't have the wherewithal to access them. So the terms that govern this relationship, how we attract the investors to invest in them, in their realization, and what we do with them. So we are exporting, gold in brick form. Yeah, we're not beneficiating it. So those kinds of exports, when the commodity price is high, then you get the returns, and it looks good in terms of just the statistics. The reality is that you're exporting jobs. Yeah, we should be beneficiating and exporting, value-add commodities.
So, is the capital itself a difficult thing to deal with?
Well, capital as a social force, remember, it's not passive.
Yes, of course.
You've seen now capital funding all kinds of parties and individuals because they want a particular outcome of the elections. You see. So as a social force, it's not difficult to deal with. Yes. If the state, which represents the people, understands how to leverage the natural resources in a way which does not, fail to attract foreign investment, but it does so for the benefit of the local economy as well. So
tough balancing act.
Yeah,
balancing act.
It's a tough balancing act. Yeah.
President Kgalema Motlanthe is in studio with us. Thanks again for staying with us. And I see calls coming through. I will get to them in a short while, but I see in the corner of my eye, and I can say not yet verified, but I see in the corner of my eye that there is a peace, a truce, Hamas is accepting a truce proposal. I'm presuming, obviously, that themselves and Israel have come to some sort of a middle ground. Your reaction to that?
Well, I always tell people that our national anthem, the Sotho versions, Morena Bulukas Chavasai Sufedi in Kgalema, was composed by Moses Mpahlele in 1942, which was in the middle of the Second World War.
Yes.
So our national anthem is a call for peace. And if we take our national symbols seriously, then that should be what guides our approach to any war situation anyway.
Yeah.
That we should always be in the forefront of calling for peace and cessation of hostilities. Of course, peace meaning not only cessation of hostilities and the silencing of the guns, but also allowing whoever is underprivileged to thrive. That's the meaning of peace in its fullness.
You speak of allowing those who are underprivileged to thrive, and there is a school of thought that says, the world cannot deal with many conflicts at the same time, particularly the media. They have this one lens, and they will only focus at a time on one particular conflict and almost forget about the rest of the world. We have that currently, Sudan, many conflicts that are happening around the world where there is not even a single lens there. But one that I want to bring to your attention is the Western Sahara, plight of the people of the Western Sahara. And as well as we've done with Gaza, and the Palestinians. Why that seems to be such a difficult intervention that we are not getting right?
Well, the plight of the Sahrawi people has occupied the South African government for a long time.
Yes.
And that is why in Mandela's days already, the people of Sahrawi were allowed to have official representation here. So even when, and that's when Morocco, which is the occupying power, recalled its own ambassador. So it's been like that for a very long time. The UN had a team which was facilitating peace processes, and it's gone, backwards, forwards, over an extended period of time. Once again, there's phosphates. So that's one of the reasons why vested interest tend to thwart all efforts to give full realization to the right of self-determination of the Western Saharans. Yeah.
I'll take calls, as I said. Let's just... you've got your headphones on. Bongani, you've been very patiently waiting there. Thanks for calling. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Pamela.
Good evening. Welcome, Bongani.
Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Sure.
And good evening to Ndate Kgalema Motlanthe.
Good evening, Bongani.
Yes. Quickly, Ndate Kgalema, I'm a citizen of White City Jabavu in Soweto. And coming to a thought, I've been listening to you. Thank you very much for sharing such an information. And my worry is that as I'm calling now, I'm sitting in a dark house without electricity. 2, we are facing elections where some of the VDs around my area, depending on that, they very same electricity. And it's a bit worrying for me because of load shedding is something of which we already forgot about, but we are experiencing more than load shedding now in my area. And I don't know if probably Eskom knows very well that we required those prepaid that they promised that they're going to install the danger box and stuff. But however, this thing of not having electricity towards the election and stuff, it brings frustration. And it will sound as if it's a sabotage to the elections as well, you understand, although it is not. But however, I don't know if the leadership and that the Kgalema, if maybe you have a task team that will look in terms of basic service deliveries that will not disrupt the elections, and to instead that maybe they approach stakeholders like Eskom to say, okay, if there's a minor problem to a certain area, just like mine, only the fuse that were bent and the circuit break, Eskom can just come and replace that and say, okay, while you're waiting for a green box, then here's a replacement that we can do. Then you have electricity and stuff. Because of a frustration of a grandmom who's receiving a grant and the children who are receiving that grant, they're not used to buy the gas cylinder and they fill up the gas there and using more money, not having a budget of that up until the month and the last recipient of the grant again. You find out that they even not reach the 15th of the month or the 20th of the month with that amount of money they're receiving from the grant, because of this is not a lifestyle that they used to in terms of spending more than the like normal days where they used to spend their grants. So if you can intervene, and that the Kgalema, please, if you can intervene, if maybe there's a people that you can deploy from the ground that they can come around our area and speak to Eskom and say, please help these people. We don't want the community that is frustrated, that is going to an election with a frustrated mind.
Thank you, Bongani.
We want them to do the correct choice.
Thanks, Bongani.
Yes, no, thank you, Bongani. Well, as a retiree, my role is really to assist where there are bottlenecks. So, indeed, you say you are from White City Jabavu, so I will definitely communicate this problem of as I understand it here, it's not load shedding per se, but there's a circuit that's not transmitting electricity. So I will definitely communicate this to the premier of the province, because he's the authority in the province. If it means Eskom technicians must be sent out there, that's what should happen.
Well, I think broadly speaking, he's speaking about a bigger problem. Eskom has had a big problem with Soweto. And I think it probably is a political situation where there needs to be some political intervention. They feel disenfranchised, and the Premier has spoken quite openly about it, to say he's trying himself. But I think it's a matter of whether there is some will from Eskom to hear the people of Soweto with some dignity. And maybe it is a bigger question than just a technician coming through, which I think you will have a better conversation with the Premier about. Kathy, in the East Rand, you're a nurse, I believe, Kathy?
Hi, Camelo. Hi. Good evening. Evening, former President. I'm Sister Kathy Kgalema from the Western Sahara.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes. Mr. Former President, actually for me, it's just a message that needs to be conveyed to our Premier. Now, I am a private nurse in the Western, and then running a clinic, seeing about plus minus 1,000 patients per month. Now, this has just said to us that there's a gap, we are closing a gap in our communities, whereby we are targeting people that don't qualify for medical aid, but they are the working class. And therefore, we are rendering services at a very nominal fee. Now, the challenge that we are having is that there is no land for us. Now, you find that we have been renting this land for years and years, and therefore we are appealing to the upcoming government to say, may you kindly look into that. Look into the health sector, private sector, whereby we are stepping in and say we are closing the gap, for the government that is struggling, to render the services to everybody. That is the first thing, land. The second thing is about a funding for small businesses. You find that we as women, especially adults, or over the age of 35, applying for finance, it's a bit tricky, because most financial sectors, you find that they are looking at the youth. But we are saying, yes, us as matured people, we are here, we are rendering services, we are having track records. May you kindly look into our proposals, because there's a lot of restrictions, but sometimes we fail to understand why are we not able to get funding. And those are my two questions to you, former President.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Pamela.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I'll definitely raise the issue of the need for a piece of land where you can probably, transfer your clinic to, because as you're saying, you providing services to plus minus 1,000 patients. So that's a huge service to the community. So it needs all the support from government. So I will definitely raise that with the Premier. And when it comes to funding and finance, the established banks in South Africa are having very stringent
The criteria is just unbelievable. Yeah.
on how to look at projects. But if, for instance, you are looking for funding to be able to cater for those with no medical aid support, then it means, in a sense, you need to find subsidies. Can the Department of Health consider subsidizing the clinic so that you charge affordable fees? Of course, the NHI was actually meant to address this kind of problem. But if you need funding for perhaps expanding the clinic or constructing from scratch, it's not that difficult, because even the financial institutions are willing, if it is a project that they can see, what in a sense drives them away, if you are fundraising and they see an item called wages or salaries, then they run away. But if it's specifically for a structure, it's not only the financial institutions, but also you can approach, the manufacturers of bricks and tiles and rafters and so on. Some may, donate and contribute in kind, but they do want to see a project. But if it's a just fundraising in general, it's very difficult. Yeah. For many NPOs and NGOs, it's very, very difficult.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. It's 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. We don't really have much more time. I have lots of questions, but I think I must probably prioritize the calls. Kgabo is calling from Vereeniging. Kgabo, thanks for calling. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, and good evening to the President. Quickly, I just want to put the President on the spot, in the interest of time. I just want to know, President, there's a growing view that the ANC, when they took over, or the black government, was not ready to govern, and there's also empirical evidence when you walk around South Africa and when you also put your ear down, you will realize that we inherited most of the SOEs that were profitable or in good condition. But today we are talking now, we've got a problem with, Eskom, the SAA, the SABC that was making profit, and all those, institutions, they are on their knees today. So I just want to, get your view on this one. Is this, reality, or what is your assessment on that? Thanks, President. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Kgabo. In 1992, the ANC had a conference, and the report from that conference at Nazareth was titled "Ready to Govern." The ANC genuinely believed it was ready to govern, and of course, from all accounts, the first years of transition, of creating an integrated democratic state, went off very well. Now, as for the SOEs, the parastatals or state-owned enterprises, such as Eskom and so on, and SAA, you will recall that at some point, if I use the example of SAA, there was a gentleman called Coleman Andrews, an American who was drafted into the management of SAA, and he did some creative accounting. Basically, he sold the aircrafts that belonged to SAA and then list them And that way he was able on the books to show some, very healthy profits. And he then got a bonus and flew off to the United States. So the inefficiencies are what really created problems. It's not that we were not ready to govern, but inefficiencies and corruption set in, which drained the resources. Remember these. If you take Eskom and Transnet was the number one industrial company on the African continent, but through processes of unbundling and unstable management, these parastatals were then forced to seek an injection from Treasury year in and year out, whereas they weren't meant to do that. They were actually meant to be profitable and contribute to the fiscus. But they were draining from the fiscus as it were. So it's hard to say you can attribute those failures to the political principles only, because it's really about, look where we are with Eskom now.
And it brings me exactly to the point that actually very few people can fault the policies of both the government and the ANC. But you yourself have publicly said even the democratic processes internally within the ANC have been corrupted. I think it's much more widespread than that. I don't think it's an ANC problem. I think there is a much bigger problem, because you also see with what happens with the public servants, where when you hear their accounts of what happens on the ground, these are not necessarily always ANC members. These are members of society. How do we then trust things like, or maybe let me ask you, how do you feel about a list you were working with? Because you come in at a point where you've already been given the list by the provinces, by the branches and so on. You're not really the one in charge of what happens on the ground to get people on the list. And there's a possibility that those lists could be corrupted, manipulation, payments and so on. Difficult, because ultimately, you just have to go by the book, but you don't really know.
Well, for the first time, we introduced the system of, interviewing all nominees.
Yes.
Yes. As you correctly point out, the list came from branches and so on. But the interviews, Pamela, at least, enabled us to set certain standards, minimum educational qualification, and knowledge and understanding of the Constitution of the Republic, because these are public representatives who take an oath to pledge, faithfulness to the Republic and the laws of the Republic. These are lawmakers who, in our departments, go to Parliament, these parliamentarians, with budgets.
Yes.
And they say, we want you to approve this budget because these are the following things we want to implement. And so the parliamentarians ought to understand that they bear the responsibility of, on behalf of the general public, ensuring that the departments do deliver in terms of the budgets. Now, you could only achieve that caliber of parliamentarian who in the past would have said, well, I didn't contest elections as an individual, it's the party. Therefore, I'm here because of the party.
Yes, at
and
the parties.
So I owe allegiance to the party.
We've seen it many times.
But when you take an oath, that oath is not fiction. It has meaning. That oath is based on the supremacy of the Constitution
the ANC,
over everything else.
The ANC has had a political school, and you've spoken about this many times. How are people confused?
Well, as I said, because the electoral system
yes.
In the past was proportional representation. So logically, the argument was, well, we are here as a favor from the party.
Yes.
And who is the party? They exclude themselves.
Yes.
From the party.
Yes.
Only the leadership becomes the party. And that's,
and to be fair, it's not an ANC problem. All parties have the same
that's
problem.
That's not how it should be.
Yes.
The parliament is an important arm of the state. And we were trying through the interviews to get the nominees to have an understanding that they are not to defer to the leadership in the ANC who are in cabinet and National Executive Committee, but to relate to them as people who must account to Parliament.
You said that the formation and others who are leaving the ANC, moving to other political parties, and formation of other new parties may be an opportunity for the ANC to continue to renew itself. What does that opportunity look like in real terms? What does the ANC have to do with this opportunity presented to them?
The ANC has to set and maintain high standards. The bar has got to be raised going forward. That's how the renewal would then come to fruition, because the bar was almost lying on the floor. So the ANC has got to raise it.
What got it there?
Because that way, you see, that would be a discriminator. That's what would set the ANC apart from other organizations. And remember, many people don't know that the Pan-Africanist Congress is a breakaway of the ANC.
Yes.
The UDM is a breakaway of the ANC. EFF,
yes.
Hope, and the new party, MK Party, they are all breakaways from the ANC. But the ANC has remained vibrant with a national footprint, whereas these breakaways slowly but surely wither away. And the ANC has got to understand that its prestige and standing is a function of how it presents itself as a service of the people, as a servant of the people. If like the old lady in Diepkloof who admonished me, said to me, you people, you look down upon us, you relate to us with disrespect, and you take us for granted. Why must you do that? You see, so in a sense, if we do the opposite of what that old lady was saying to me, then people will identify, they'll feel truly represented. And if you maintain channels to hear them out, because the advantage of direct voter contact is that people have grievances, have demands, and so on, but they also have suggestions.
Yes. I don't want to confuse the two issues. I want to park the MK Party. I've left that conversation. But I want to speak about a cohort of people who I think the ANC needs to talk about a bit more. And that's the MK veterans, Mgonto Wesizwe veterans, who for a long time have said we feel neglected. We had one very unfortunate public meeting, hostage, I don't know what to call it, which I think made us stop and think about whether the ANC has truly looked after the people that fundamentally got us here today and gave of their lives for our freedom. How do you feel about that? Do you think we have looked after them?
Well, when Madiba was still president, Madiba raised money, and then MKMVA was established as a welfare organization to look after, dependents of fallen combatants, ensuring that they are seen through the schooling years. Now, like all other formations, the community of ex-combatants also got factionalized. And a few years ago now, they were then, the ANC said, no, they must be reintegrated and form one organization. Because it was no longer just a welfare organization. They were now playing an active role. Some of them were commissars, and so they thought they needed a platform distinct from branches and Veterans League of their own, so they can input as an organized collective. Now, what has then happened is that through the merger, those of them who occupied certain positions of leadership at regional level and so on, and who didn't make it in the new integrated structure, feel attracted to this new party because they think it's a beeline to 5 years of steady earnings. So that's understandable because they come from a position of desperation. Yes.
I don't know if you've seen this advert everybody's talking about today, where there is a burning flag. You don't have to respond to it, but a lot of people are talking about it. How do you feel about that ad, if you've seen it?
Well, the period or days leading up to the election is sometimes described as a silly season because people tend in their campaigning to campaign negatively. So they speak about other parties, faults and so on, without ever saying what they themselves represent. And it tends to generate lots of negative energy. So that kind of campaigning, which is meant to instill fear, it's actually based on the misconception that, if certain permutations happen post-elections, the flag of the country would be banned. The flag representing the nation in its entirety, meaning that the nation would be divided into warring camps, and it's not true. This is the 7th elections we are going into, and I'm sure that they will be peaceful and fair. So there's no need to mobilize by instilling fear in people.
You're absolutely right. It is campaign season, and that's exactly why you're here. I would have loved to speak to you outside of campaign season. But we're here now, and people are listening because they want to make up their minds. What's your plea to those who are going to the polls on the 29th, 27th, 28th, and the 29th of May?
Well, my plea is that your vote counts. Each one of their votes count, and if they don't exercise this right, others will do so. In the past, we know. In Soweto, the mayor of Soweto would be elected by 6 people, 6 out of a population of almost just under 2 million. And then of course that councillor wields authority because They even a sham election like that gave them some authority. So if those who withdraw from participating in the election disadvantage themselves. And of course, you see, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights gives all South African citizens and other non-citizens who are in the country certain rights which are enshrined in those foundational documents. However, to realize those rights also need agency. The institutions are there to, open up access to those rights, but where they are failing, there's need for agency, civil society, professionals, all sectors of society who understand that these rights must be realized. Yes.
And for those who have given the ANC a chance before and a mandate before and are not sure, like the old lady you spoke to this weekend, why should they trust you again?
Well, that's their judgment call.
Of course.
And that's why when you engage with them directly and they raise their concerns, half the time their concerns are bottlenecks.
Yes.
Which, with the correct channels understood, can be addressed forthwith. I mean, there was an old lady there who has not been able to walk for a long time, has no wheelchair, and all it took was for her to raise that concern, and the MEC immediately called. And they said, in 4 days' time, you'll have a wheelchair.
The concern, though, is that not everyone has access to an MEC
that's right.
or your ear
that's right.
or the cameras.
That's
you would
right.
like everyone to have access,
that's right.
and it should be just as simple as that.
But that's right. But that's the role of the privileged.
Yes.
All of us who are privileged, I regard myself as a privileged South African citizen because if there's a bottleneck that I believe needs the
you call a friend.
the president's ear,
Yes.
I make sure that I communicate that to the president. If it needs a minister's ear, I make sure I do that. That's the role of the privileged in society. That's why you have human rights lawyers, you have organized labor, you have public representatives who must have constituency offices. So that the general populace must have access. And that is why, even protocol questions, the fact that you are a public figure and you don't go through the general concourse of this railway station or an airport, because that way you meet with people and they engage you. They give you feedback, direct feedback. You see, so if we can have our public representatives and leaders accessible right through the elections wouldn't cost half the amount of money it's costing. Yeah.
Are they just a ritual, or do they actually bring fundamental change?
They do. They're a test, you see, because it's a constitutional imperative that you must renew the mandate. So people are able to assess you. People are able to say, well, you've disappointed us. Please don't come back to us.
President Kgalema Motlanthe, thank you.
Thank you.
Once again for coming through.
Pamela.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.